Hi, welcome to Going Green. I'm Kathleen Harvey, your host. Swiss chard is a cool weather crop, much like lettuce and spinach. It's wonderful to grow in the spring, and it's great to harvest as it starts to grow. The way you harvest is you take a sharp pair of scissors, make sure that they're clean. Last time you use them, if you use them on any type of food, make sure you disinfect them first with rubbing alcohol or hydrogen peroxide to make sure that they're clean. Or at worst, use antibacterial soap on them, but make sure that they're clean. So now we have our clean pair of scissors. We're going to harvest some Swiss chard leaves by taking the largest leaves off of the bottom of the plant and leaving the young, smaller leaves to continue to grow, and you'll harvest them as it grows. So what we do is we start at the bottom, taking our scissors. We see this nice big leaf here, and we've harvested that. And then we go to the bottom and look for the next biggest leaves. And looks like some neighborhood bunnies have been at this. We have to learn to share with our wildlife neighbors. As you can see, that one's partially chewed, but there's still some usable leaf on it. And I'm going to continue to cut off the bottom. And what we're going to be doing is taking this into the kitchen and sauteing this much like you would sauteed spinach. Swiss chard has a nice texture. It's crunchier than spinach, but is very, very healthy for you. There's lots of good vitamins and minerals. It's one of the leafy greens. Anything that is green is very healthy for you, and these plants should be readily available this time of year to grow. So as you can see, as I'm cutting the big leaves off of the outer part of the plant. You don't want to take too many because you want the plant to continue to grow, to have enough strength left to continue to produce. So what I've done here is left the smaller leaves, and in a few more days these outer leaves now, which have become the new outer leaves, will continue to grow. And when they get big enough, then I can come back in a few more days and pick some more leaves. So now that we have our harvest, see how much we have here? This is a good amount. This will make a very nice side dish. You can cut this up and put it into a salad. Or what we're going to do today is saute it just like you would make sauteed spinach, and it'll make a wonderful side dish to go with any kind of a poultry or pork or even beef dinner. So let's go inside and cook. Okay, we just brought in our freshly harvested Swiss chard leaves. So the first thing we need to do is to wash them off to make sure that we get off any soil residue or anything else that might be on here. Get them rinsed all nice and clean in cool water. Okay, shake off the extra water and put them aside. Next, I'm going to take fresh garlic. I've already have some that has been pre-peeled, but it's whole garlic. I'm going to take the tips off of the bottom, then I'm going to dice it, and then I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in the pan. I'm using a saute pan here. Notice the sides are rounded up. That's a saute pan to keep everything in and away from the edges. We're going to put a little bit of olive oil in, just a little bit, just enough to caramelize the garlic, which we're about to dice. And then at the very end, just as the garlic is caramelizing, we're going to add our chopped Swiss chard. So let's get started. I'm going to rinse my garlic just real quick. I have a nice sharp chef's knife, and we're putting the garlic down, and I'm cutting off the ends, which is where the roots were, because that does not go into our food. I always cut that off first, keeping the whole parts aside. So I'm taking the tips off. Okay, now what we have left to work with here is our whole garlic. So taking your knife, Starting at the tip with your sharp knife, you just sort of rock it back and forth in a quick rocking motion, and that will quickly dice the garlic. It doesn't have to be really, really tiny, just small enough so that you don't have any really big pieces left. And there we go. Okay, now we have our nicely minced garlic. I'm going to take a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to say maybe just a tablespoonful or so. That's all you need. Just enough to lightly coat the bottom. And we're going to let that heat. Roll it around the pan to completely coat the bottom. You see there's not a whole lot here, just enough to coat the bottom. So now while we're waiting for that to heat, we want it to heat. I'm going to take my Swiss chard and cut off these tips on the bottom and put the leaves aside, just cutting off these tips. The tips can be a little bit bitter. Oops, I missed one. I missed a piece of garlic. Let me get that guy all sliced up. See, there we go. Rocking motion, all sliced. Okay, take the tips off of the Swiss chard. The tips are going to go into the composting pile to go back and feed the rest of the garden. Getting rid of these tips so we just have nice crisp leaves left. See, the tips have a little bit of brown around the edges. Some bunnies might have been nibbling on them. We share with our wildlife friends. As long as they don't eat it all, I don't mind so much. Okay, and the last one. There we go. So now all the tips are off. We have our diced garlic. And now the pot should be hot, our saute pan. So I'm going to take, and you hear that it is in fact hot because you can hear that it's sizzling. There we go. Now we turn it down a bit. Don't get scared about the flare up, that's normal, as long as you keep it under control. And make sure that you keep your fingers well away because this pan is very, very hot now. So I'm taking a spatula that's meant for saute pans, and I'm just stirring it around to make sure that the edges all get caramelized. And while that's caramelizing, I'm going to come back over here and quickly chop my Swiss chard into pieces. Don't worry about them being even or too small. You're basically just going for bite size because they are going to shrink down when you cook them. Okay. See how nice? They're just not huge anymore. So now they're bite size. We come back over here and see that the garlic, see how it's starting to turn brown in the olive oil? So it's just nicely caramelizing. That smells wonderful. Now we're ready to put our Swiss chard in. So we add that, and when you first add it, it's going to look like a lot. See how it completely fills the pan? Well, what's actually going to happen is that as it cooks, it will cook down. So same thing here. Oh, and we need to make sure that now we turn it down to low. You see how the heat is much lower than it was. The flame is much lower. Continually stir, and you're going to coat the Swiss chard and the now beautifully caramelized garlic. Just until it starts to shrink down just a bit. Just until it heats all the way through. You're coating it in the olive oil. And you see how it's starting to shrink down. At first, our Swiss chard was overflowing the pan, And as we're continuing to cook, it's shrinking down. So when we're done, it's going to look very much like sauteed spinach. And see, now the olive oil has completely coated everything very nicely. I'm going to turn the heat off. And there we have it, a wonderful spring side dish that'll go with any meal for lunch or for dinner. Bon appetit! Thank you for joining us. I'm Kathleen Harvey. We're Going Green. I hope you join us next time.